Beth Williams was a professional religious instructor with a great marriage, healthy kids, and a dream job, except she was waking up in the middle of the night with panic attacks. Yoga was supposed to help. It did. But when she also started having mystical experiences, the kind she'd spent her whole religious life trying to earn with perfectionism, she was baffled. Why now, when she was doing nothing? That question unraveled everything. Beth quit her job, started training in Reiki, and eventually put up a flyer in a coffee shop to start her own practice. When she first started getting messages that felt too personal to share, she held back. But then she realized that wasn't her decision to make, and started seeing miracles. Beth works with her clients' existing belief systems. Jesus shows up for Christians, fairies show up for people who are into fae. The healing they need isn't coming from her, it's coming from them. So we're left asking, if the healer is already inside you, what exactly is a psychic like Beth even doing, and does it work?
Spectrovision Radio.
Welcome to Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs, everybody, where we talk about all the things they said weren't real. I am here with my co-hosts, Tom and Jordan, and we are very excited today because we're going to interview Beth Williams. So just a little bit of background on how I know Beth. Listeners might already have gleaned this from various podcast episodes, but I've had a lot of health issues, especially the past 8 or 9 years, including a 2-week stay in Cedars-Sinai where I did end up in kidney failure. And so I've got all kinds of chronic issues and anxiety around health. And so I've seen a couple energy healers, in part because once you've tried all the Western options, you try a lot of other things too. And Beth is my favorite energy healer I've ever worked with. I've been able to do 3 sessions with her over the past couple of years. And I always feel like the way that she uses her gifts is very, very special. And she's taught me a lot, but I have a lot more to learn. So I wanted to bring her on specifically to talk a bit about how it is that people with her type of gifts, how they acquire them, how they hone them, how they use them, and just give people a little bit of a better understanding of what I really do think can be quite a misunderstood topic. I think people associate, at least in my experience, energy healing with a lot of cockamamie, I guess. And I think that that's pretty short-sighted. And so we'd love to unpack that today. A little bit about Beth and her bio. She's been a practicing psychic for 7 years, a professional tarot reader for 4 years, and she feels that psychic healing has been the most effective form of psychotherapy for her and her best teacher. And if you'd like to contact her, you can find her on Instagram at Psychic Integration. At Psychic Integration is her handle. And I'll repeat that at the end of the podcast as well. Okay, Beth, without further ado, that was so much ado. How are you? Thank you for being here.
I'm so good. I'm excited to get to talk about something that I feel is really impactful and important to me, and just feel excited. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. The energy healing thing is one of the Institute of Noetic Studies 12 inventories of psi abilities. You guys remember that when they identified all that stuff? And it's something that is particularly interesting to me, although I'd love to talk about tarot, and I'd love to talk about what form your psychic abilities take. But I guess where I'd like to start is when did you start? Did you know when you were 4, or did you read a book, or when was the light bulb moment for you, Beth?
No, I didn't. I mean, I don't know how many people have mystical experiences when they were younger, but I was a very religious person my entire life, and within the religion that I was a part of, you can pick magic up along the way. And so I was always interested in the idea of personal revelation, and I was always interested in the gift of the Holy Ghost and how that can give you personal revelation and things like that. And so I did have experiences growing up, but I could always frame them in my religious upbringing. I could always find a place for it in my religious ideology, and I did not think I was psychic. I mean, there were times when I was like, I felt my grandma with me, but I could always frame it in a religious sense. And I kind of just thought everybody was experiencing that religiously, but now I think that a lot of people aren't experiencing that religiously. Yeah.
So when did it become, I guess I'm curious about where you feel the psychic part, or perhaps like the psychic healing part. When did you start working with others?
Yeah.
And or did it start with yourself and then transition into others? Talk a little bit more about the sort of genesis of your professional life.
Yeah, I feel like I was living a really normal life, and then there was kind of a revolution that happened to me almost 10 years ago that really started to uproot everything that I understood about myself and about the world in general. And it just kind of happened that I was living my best life. I had a great marriage and I had healthy kids, and I actually was working at my dream job. I was a paid religious seminary teacher in high schools here and really loved that job. But I started waking up in the middle of the night having panic attacks. But I didn't know that's what it was. I would just wake up and be like, why haven't I been breathing while I was sleeping? And my mind was spinning out, and I didn't really have any tools to do anything about it. And so I somehow just stumbled across, oh, I think yoga helps you breathe. Oh, I found an early morning yoga class. I started going to yoga classes and then was like confused about how good I felt from doing yoga, and that it was this kind of mental health solution for me. So I kind of just started doing yoga more. And then through yoga, I started having mystical experiences in meditation. And that was really confusing because I was like, I'm not doing anything religious. I'm not studying my scriptures. I'm not serving in the temple. Like all of these things that like normally I would be like, oh, if you're doing what God wants you to do, then you're going to have this gift of the Spirit or something. And so that kind of was quite perplexing to me, but I really liked it. It was like I would crave that. If I could feel something from the other side, like I would do more of whatever it took to have those kinds of experiences. And so yoga kind of became this the inception of this revolution for me, where I became more embodied. You know, I was very dissociated, have a lot of childhood trauma. And so I was kind of like only living in my head, not knowing that that's what I was doing. But yoga became this way of like an embodied movement practice that kind of generalized to better health, and then also mystical experiences. And that yoga, like I left my job, then I left my religion, then I shifted to psychic healing. And so it was kind of like this rebirth that started a few years ago. And I've been kind of on a roller coaster for several of those years, trying to get to a place of like, can we be done? Can we be done having all the crazy things happen? But yeah, also just my life is a lot healthier, a lot more balanced. And now I can look back at who I was and realize I was trying to fit into a box that I could never fit into. And yoga became this, it was the first time I'd been in a community where I felt accepted for who I was, rather than, okay, if I do enough things in this other community, then I'll be accepted. It was like, oh, this is what it feels like to be accepted. It was just like an awakening on so many levels. And so sometimes I feel like I'm only 9 years old because it's been 9 years since like I started to have like these realizations, a lot of awareness of like, oh, I was a manipulative mother. Oh, I was a controlling person. Oh, all of these realizations where a lot of my behaviors were not really in line with my deeper core values. And so there's been a lot of unwinding all surrounding this kind of spiritual awakening.
Would you be comfortable talking about some of the mystical experiences that were sort of maybe the most surprising to you when you were first starting out with your yoga practice?
Yeah. I mean, they were simply things like I would be in a meditation and then I would feel God with me. And I'd be like, I have wanted to feel this feeling of divine love and acceptance. I've been working my butt off doing everything I could religiously to get this feeling, but why am I experiencing it now when I'm doing nothing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then other times, same thing in the meditation, be like, oh, my great grandma is here. Oh, I love her so much. What a blessing it is to feel her. Why? And so it's just like simple things like that where I could still frame it in terms of my religion. And so that wasn't a problem. But the cognitive dissonance really was, why would it be here when I'm doing nothing? You know?
It's so funny to me that you would frame it as doing nothing. I mean, probably this is just a human experience. This thing that you go through of thinking like, I have to do X, Y, and Z in order to get, the thing that I'm looking for. Like that there's this transactional nature to life. Like you have to show up and you have to do these things in this right way in order. It's like, which if you think about it, it's a very sort of Western materialistic scientific way of thinking. Everything is cause and effect. Everything is stimulus response. And it makes sense. It just makes intuitive sense to us that that's the way the universe would work. And so when we crave mystical experience and when we crave contact with the divine, we think, well, I have to put in the right work. I have to do the right things in order to get the thing that I want. And I don't think that that's entirely wrong, but there's obviously a giant missing piece, which hopefully, if you're lucky enough, you find it, which it seems like what you found was that it wasn't that you didn't have to do anything. It was that the things that you were doing were not like the thing that was necessary. And the thing that was necessary was the thing that you were then doing, which was this sort of like physical opening up, this setting to rest, like getting your mind to quiet down, basically.
Yeah.
Like you were essentially entering a contemplative practice without realizing it. And then allowing God to show up in a way, which is like so exciting. And I would say I've had sort of similar experiences where some of the most profound and mystical and like senses I've had have come when I managed to accidentally fall into a meditation in the right way. And I'm like, oh, I feel it for a second. This is amazing. And then I work really, really hard to get back there and can't do it. Anyway.
What you said is so resonant with me on so many levels, and there's a direct correlation between trauma and psychic ability. What was it that Brother Richard said? There is no healer who has not first been wounded. And speaking personally, I am a person who has intellectualized everything. I know that my co-hosts will disagree vehemently, but don't waste your breath. It's true. And
if you say so, Tom.
And a lot of, in fact, yoga used to make me mad. I'd get mad about my hamstrings, and so a lot of the grief and anger and things that I would feel have been somaticized right in my body, which then I would leave and go upstairs into the attic and intellectualize, everything. So I too have started a yoga practice, and I started meditating in the pandemic when it was like, wow, okay, let's try this, And it was there that I encountered the observer. So the idea of, oh, I've stepped out, I'm spending time with myself. I'm inhabiting my own body. I'm entered into a meditative state where the ego identity, which is not my real self, is not taking preeminence. The chattering mind is sort of like quieted down. I'm also speaking from someone who has also suffered from crippling panic attacks, in my youth. So I get it. But that directionality, the doing nothing, which by the way is Wu Wei, right? It's Taoism, right? It's enlightened action or whatever they call it. That's the access point where the thing comes in, and then your brain's like, wrong context. What's happening, but you just let it be. And then what I love is that you were like reoriented yourself to move toward that thing that like, oh, I'm having this experience and I trust this experience, which I think would be a huge component, right? Where it is God or it is your great grandmother or whatever it is, and not something that maybe you were afraid of or hesitant to embrace. Maybe you went through that process, but I don't think there's even a question here. I just wanted to validate what you're saying and say that it's huge. It's hugely important stuff, that kind of practice of embodiment.
Yeah, I would say for me it was, this feels so much lighter. This feels so much more refreshing and relaxing. It was so much easier than what I normally experienced, which is a lot of self-criticism and a very rigid way of thinking and being. And like, I have to be this way. And every time I step out of this path of perfectionism, then I am a failure and a terrible person. And so like these experiences through yoga were such a relief. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get more of that. And having been someone, like I have a pretty significant history of childhood trauma and like a lot of mental illness that was so pervasive until yoga became like this incredible catalyst for me to really make a lot of movement towards like being a more integrated person. It was this wonderful experience where even my husband would be like, yeah, go to yoga. You're just so much easier to be around, you know? And my kids were like, you could go to all the yoga in the world because it's so much easier to be around you afterwards. Because it was just like this balancing of myself.
I'm so struck by your story because I feel like there are many, many people who can relate to a story of feeling confined or suppressed in whether it's religious or it's a family culture or whatever it is, but I think it's the story of almost every person on some level. But that feeling of being able to let it be easy, let yourself feel good, I think that can feel very, very foreign to people. And that might be an extra Western idea as well, that it's like, this is supposed to be hard. I'm not supposed to be comfortable. And so I could see how it would feel counterintuitive that I'm enjoying this. Am I allowed?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like,
Yes.
yeah, that's actually how a spiritual journey can feel. Like, it's hard because I do think that there is some truth to the fact that life is not just about pursuing comforts, but that's not what you're doing here. You're pursuing the healing power that will help when the lack of comfort arrives. You know, it's and they are different things. I'm curious about whether or not, like, I'm not sure if this is the juncture that I'm trying to get to, but was it difficult to start calling yourself a psychic? Like, at what point do you start doing that once you start unlocking your spiritual? Because not everybody who leaves a church becomes a psychic, but you like bloomed into a more embodied person, like you said, but also a healer. How did you start that part where you started being able to call yourself that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think honestly, part of it is egoic. Like there is a part of me that likes the I like telling people that I'm a psychic because I like seeing their reaction, because either people are like, oh my gosh, tell me more. Or literally I've had people like take steps back from me and leave the building if I say that to them. And so there's part of me that has wanted to see, to be the energy or the vibration of like a little bit of a disruptor, you know? So I live in a community that is very conservative, and the fact that I have a pride flag is a really big deal in the neighborhood that I live in, you know? But I like to have that pride flag out there because I feel like it's broadcasting a specific signal that I want to say, like, for me, this is a valid expression.
When did you start taking clients? When did it start applying to others?
So I became a yoga instructor and I left my past job. And then through the studio that I was teaching at, I saw an advertisement for a training for energy healing. And I'd never heard of this before. I didn't really have much. I mean, around here, I had been to energy healers like once every 5 years or something when my mental health was really bad. But I hadn't really ever considered it beyond like, oh, I go when I'm at the brink of like a terrible mental breakdown, I'll go and get more help from them. But it was advertised, and immediately my heart just started pounding, and I kept hearing this message like, look into it. And I was like, why? I think you have to be psychic for this. Why would I do this, you know? But I just said a prayer and said, if I'm supposed to do this, then show me the money. Like, show me where, because it was kind of expensive.
Yeah.
And within 15 minutes, I realized, oh, I have that exact amount of money in my Venmo account. okay, I'm going to take a leap of faith. Like I was still religious at the time and had kind of like built my life on this idea of like, sometimes out of the blue, God asks you to do something. And so you take the leap of faith. And so this was just another me saying, I'm going to walk into this thing that I have no idea about. And so I went to the Reiki training and they were like, okay, put your hands on their body and hold it there. And so I was like, it's not feeling anything. I just kind of like, what are we doing here? And my trainer was like, oh, Beth, yes. Oh, Beth, that is so good. Good job. Like I was like, doing something and I was like not unaware that I was doing anything, but I was like, okay, we're just gonna, but anyway. And then at the end of the training, she said, okay, your homework is to do this 10 of these sessions on anybody. So I just put it on social media. Oh, I'm doing this thing. Anybody want a free session? And people would come and lay on the carpet in my living room and I would do the session. And still, like, I was like, in my head, like, I'm wasting their time. What are we even doing here? I don't know if this is, and then they would be like, oh, my health, like, I got into, like, the lowest heart rate I've ever gotten into. Or that said that I was in, like, theta delta waves. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess something's happening, And so I just did 10 sessions. And then I also at that time, like, more crazy things happening, like, I knew this woman who was a massage therapist and she just out of the blue said, oh, have you ever considered being a massage therapist? And I said, yes. And she's like, oh, good, because I'm looking for an apprentice. And I walked away from that conversation and I was like, I've never considered being a massage therapist. Like, why did I say yes? Like, I don't know how that came out of my mouth. But I ended up apprenticing with her and she was a psychic and she showed me like, this is how you read the body in a massage. And that's how you know which areas to work on. And sometimes she would just like, we'd be doing a massage together and she'd, here's an area of the body that was particularly tender or wasn't like resolving the tension that it was holding. And then she would just kind of work into the conversation. So tell me about something. And she would kind of do energy healing during the massage. And so I became a massage therapist and began doing that with my clients as well. But it was through those Reiki sessions, that's the form of energy work that I learned, that I would be holding the position on their body and like seeing, I know I have to stay here watching the clock for a whole minute. And so I would just try to empty out my thoughts and say like, I'm sending light and love. I'm sending healing and love. And sometimes in clearing out that, emptying out the mind, there would be things that would like come through, like my back would start hurting. And I'd be like, was my back hurting beforehand? No. Okay. Does my back hurt because of me or is it have to do with them? And kind of like have these little conversations with myself and then notice I would be like, is your back hurting? And then they'd be like, oh yeah. And then I'd like wait for like the thought of like, can we talk about this then? And it would be not related to the back. It'd be like, okay, then can we talk about your son? And that's kind of just how it started to go for me. And I really liked it. I liked this idea. I have always been someone who's very sensitive and someone who cries all the time about everything. And the energy healing training that I went through was the way that I came to realize and recognize when I'm feeling somebody else's energy versus when I'm feeling something that only belongs to me. And I don't know if I would have figured that out otherwise, but it was the greatest gift because my entire life, I've always kind of been just like this sponge or this, just soaking up everybody else's stuff for good or for worse. And I would like hear something about one of my nephews and then worry about it for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, they've resolved it within a half hour of the conversation that I had about it. Sure. But like kind of just carrying everybody's wounds and everybody's suffering and like not really knowing what to do about it. So the energy healing training that I went to was like this beautiful way for me to be like, oh, there's a benefit to them figuring this out for themselves. There's a benefit for me having some measure of separation. Like me working on my own stuff can be so much more productive than like taking all of my attention and trying to fix somebody else when they probably have the tools to fix it for themselves,
Oh, yeah.
I've been sitting on a question for a minute, and I think this is probably the right time to ask it, just because I love a good story. What's the most surprising or miraculous or objectively unbelievable story that you feel like you've participated in your experiences as a healer or a psychic?
I feel like there's a lot. I'll tell you, this is kind of how I came to have the ethical standard that I keep with clients now. When I was just starting, I met a new friend, and when she heard what I did, I do energy work, she was like, oh, I want to come have a session. So she comes, she has a session, and I'm kind of new in like reading the body and giving messages and things like that. And in the midst of it, I get this piece of information that feels too personal to share. Like, this is a new friend. We're not this good of friends yet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the message was about her husband's like impotency, like erectile dysfunction.
Oof.
And so I get this message and I was like, oh no, no.
We don't need to talk about
thank you. Yeah. And so we finish up the session. She leaves. She's happy with what happened, but I feel completely chastised afterwards. And the questioning that I had for myself is, why are you doing this? Are you doing this so that everybody can see the razzle dazzle of like, I get messages, I'm a fancy person?
Wow.
Or is it was a lot of like, if you had the guts to actually follow through with that message, she would have had healing to take with her on her way.
Oh, man.
And I was really convicted by that experience. And I was like, I mean, I still do have a big ego. I do like this thing that I get to do. I think it's really fantastic and amazing and beautiful. But that was a turning point for me where I was like, you know what? I need to be accountable with the information that comes through, even if it's embarrassing, even if I'm completely wrong and they're like, you're an idiot, or why would you ever, or that you, or you're so stupid, you know, like anything that could happen. I just came to this agreement with myself, like whatever comes through, I'm going to say it. Even if it doesn't turn out well for me, I'm willing to do that thing, you know? So pretty soon after that, like I kind of put my shingle out and put little flyers up in coffee shops saying like, hey, most of my clients are just word of mouth, but it was me saying like, I'm putting myself out there. I'm labeling myself as a psychic. I'm willing to allow this to be my reputation. And somebody found the coffee shop thing and booked an appointment with me, and they came, and they were from out of town. They were here visiting their parents, and they'd gotten in a mountain biking accident the day before. And they'd gone to the ER, and the ER was like, we will not give you narcotics. And so they were in a lot of pain, like they'd bruised their ribs. They were kind of like all cut up and like wounded everywhere. And so he was like, so let's just see if you can do something. And I was like, okay. So he had a pretty significant injury on his knee, and then another injury on his rib, and then his forehead was all messed up as well. So those are the areas that I was like sending healing to. So I just told him, here's the information that's coming through. And so the information for his knee was, your knee wants you to slow down. Your knee wants more drinking beer on your back porch at sunset. Like just more like not doing, just more being. And then I went to his rib, and I saw this. It was kind of like he'd had a relationship with someone that had soured him a bit. And so he was carrying this idea that women are conniving and they're kind of gold diggers and they're kind of users. So I said, this is this belief that you're holding on to, and you're generalizing it to all women. And do you have a daughter? And he said, yes. And I said, you're generalizing it to your daughter. So you need to like have a conversation with her and let her example to you, like undo this belief that you're carrying. And then I go to his head. And as soon as I did, I saw somebody take their wedding ring off, but I knew that it was him taking his wedding ring off and pretending that they weren't married. And so I just said, and you have been in a situation where somebody pretended that they weren't married. And that's, you know, basically what I said, pretended they weren't married and did things that someone who's not married would do. And I write all of this information down and like take notes for my client. And afterwards I'm like, well, here's your note. And he points to the stuff about his knee and he says, nope, I don't agree with that. That's not real. I get enough rest. And then he points to the notes that I'd written about his rib, about these ideas about women. That's also not true. I don't think that about women. And I was like, okay. And then he points to the notes that I wrote about his forehead, about taking the wedding ring off. And he said, but that is spot on. And I was like, how would I know that, Anyway, so he leaves. It was so brave of me. I'm like, just kind of like, good job being brave. Good job saying what came through. I don't have to be responsible for what he does with this information.
Sure.
And I never see him again. Like, he doesn't live in my state. So then I get a call from him out of the blue, like a couple of days later. And he was like, hey, I just want you to know, as I was having this long drive back home, I called my daughter and I had like an hours long conversation with her. And it was so good for me and it was so good for our relationship. And I just want you to keep doing what you do.
Oh,
That's so sweet.
And it was so validating, right? Like, for me to have that first experience where I knew that I had not acted in my highest vibration because I only wanted people to see the razzle dazzle. And then this other experience of like, okay, I'm going to tell this dude that he cheated on his wife. And then for all of that to be so confirming, it was like, I don't know. It did change things. And so I've had subsequent sessions where I've said things and people are like, no, that's so, that connects to nothing, So I've had subsequent sessions where I don't get the validation. It's just some weirdo, crazy thing that I said, but I'm still just rooted in the ethics of like, I'm willing to be the voice for whatever's coming through.
Honestly, that matches up well with a lot of what we've talked to people about remote viewing as well. And there, it's not like this space can be a space of 100% accuracy. That's part of the reason people think it's BS. But it's like, that doesn't make it BS. It's not a black and white situation.
Yeah.
And if we're going to just be in our egos, it would be, I want to be right 100% of the time. And that actually doesn't really work when it comes to spiritual transformation. It's not really what it's about.
And I'll tell people, psychics are only right 70% of the time. Like, keep your discernment with you. Don't make the assumption that anybody is your oracle or anybody's your guru. You are the healer you've been looking for, but also allowing somebody to hold space for you and kind of give you another possibility or a point of view. Maybe that helps you. You could try that out if you're called to that.
Yeah. And you never know what the, like, interpreting that is so hard too. Cause like the first two things you pointed out of those three things, like the first two things were so based on, his own, like what his own thought patterns are and what like his own ideas about his own life were. And like, so who's to say, like, maybe the first one was sort of inaccurate and it was kind of like clouded by things in your own mind, or maybe you were spot on, but he was lying to himself. And so he had no, absolute denial about it. And like, clearly that was kind of what was going on with number two, but number three was like, you can't really lie to yourself about that. It's like, you either did or you didn't, and so it's just interesting to me that like you put yourself in a place of great vulnerability by being willing to say those things and deliver those things or communicate those things without knowing that you may not get confirmation either direction. Like, and that you won't even know a lot of the time whether or not the confirmation you do or don't get is even accurate. Like, you just have to say, well, okay, I'm willing to do the job, even though I know that, like, I might not get what I personally would love to get out of this situation. I think that's
absolutely.
I mean, I don't want to. I'm tempted to say something like inspiring or whatever, which it just feels really trite, but it is.
I will be your inspiration, Jordan. Thank you. I will. But yeah, I feel like I've noticed this with students who I've helped with them developing their psychic gifts, that they will do all the training, and then I'm like, so you really just have to practice this a lot, and then they're unwilling to because that would break down. They would have to let other people see that this is something that they're interested in or something that they want to develop, and that they don't. They just close it back down, which I have no skin in that game. I don't care, like everybody gets to do what they want with this one precious life, and it's okay if you're not going to go this way.
I am immediately, and I actually would love to invite you to stick around with us for a little while after we finish up, just for what we call the epilogue, which is a conversation we'll put behind a paywall. And there are a few things that I'm just going to flag because I want to make sure and bring them up in the epilogue that I don't really want to talk about without it being behind a paywall.
Okay.
And one of them is I want to draw some parallels between some of the experiences that you have as a psychic healer and what's something else that you will personally be familiar with is priesthood blessings, and one thing that I will say as a precursor to that, some of those follow-up questions I'll have, is that it strikes me culturally that this is one of the reasons that we don't do that more in our communities. And it's something that we encourage each other to do and that we talk about and that a lot of people have really good experiences doing, but it does bring you to a place of like extreme vulnerability on both sides where you have to say, oh, I have to be open and willing to sort of hear or say things that feel very vulnerable. And it's like that level of vulnerability is a real challenge for most people. And so I think that I see a lot of parallels there, and I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that when we later.
For sure.
I want to preface my remarks because one has to tread lightly when talking about healing and Western medicine and stuff. So I just got both my eyes worked on cataract removal, and I went in this eye, for example, from being 21,000 to 2025, and Western medicine saved my son's life when he was 3.5 and diagnosed with leukemia. I mean, just straight up. But Western medicine did not save my mom's vision when she had macular degeneration. That was traditional Chinese medicine, actually, that saved her vision. And so I'm not knocking it. You know, wonderful, wonderful things have been accomplished through materialist science and Western medicine modalities. Having said that, it does not feel reciprocal. It feels like a one-way thing. You are the patient. They are the doctor. You know, you are given a material thing. Take this pill. More and more, it seems like, take this pill. Or, here, you know, here's your therapeutic whatever. I've got half an hour with you. Bye. Gotta go. You know, and my question to you is, how collaborative is energetic healing? How collaborative is that? I can talk all day long about massage therapy, giving, receiving, the art of receiving, letting go, you know, non-resistance. But what's it like in your mind with the healing and the person between the practitioner and the person being worked on? I don't know what you would call them.
Yeah, I just call them clients.
Clients.
Yeah, I guess I'll start speaking and then you can tell me if I'm answering the question that you're asking. I feel like life is a mystery. And so to make the assumption that all of your solutions are going to come through one channel is going to show you that it will not, you know? And so every time I think, oh God, I'm trying to think of the book that I'm referencing, but there's this idea that anytime you put excess potential on one person or one idea or one ideology, then the universe is going to show you that they do not have excess potential. There's going to be balancing forces. So anytime you think psychic healing is the only way for me, Western medicine, Chinese medicine, therapy, any other modality, that's not it. It's only through psychic healing. Then you're probably going to have some session with a psychic where you're taken advantage of, or you are given direct contrary information that actually is harmful to you. And so I feel like our human development is to go from being someone who has to rely on everything external in order to get your needs met, like a little baby, you know? They're going to die unless somebody is doing everything for them. And then the path of human development is over time to become more autonomous and more able to be the person who takes care of yourself, but you're never the person who is an island, who never needs outside influence, right? And so I feel like my role as a psychic healer is, or my ideal client is someone who recognizes I am my healer. I am the answer that I've been looking for. And a person needs support from time to time, from here or from there. And so me, in my discernment, I can go inward and say, what is going to be best for me now? Is it time for me to turn towards Western medicine and take the best of what they have to offer now? Or is it time to leave that aside and go in a different way? That's generally how I feel about life in general, is we are meant to be really great caretakers, but for some reason we're here on a planet with other people, and other people provide solutions for us sometimes. So whenever you're giving too much of your authority away to somebody else, it's going to bite you in the butt. And anytime that you are only taking advice from yourself, that's also going to show that you need to balance this out in one way or another.
So do you think it's fair to characterize what you do, not everything that you do, but one part that you play in that practitioner and client relationship is as a facilitator for the client's own healing propensities themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been thinking in the last few months about this, because sometimes clients will come to me and like mediumship will come through. Like recently I had a client who his mom came through, and it was really fun because sometimes my mediumship is not very clear. So a lot of information came through, and I was like able to give him information that was really validating for who she was. And then we kind of like do this whole healing with him and his mom. And then he says, but is she okay? And I was like, oh, because I don't know if there's an afterlife. Like I do talk about it like there's an afterlife, but I don't know, And like, for me to say, oh yeah, she's totally fine. All I could do, like part of my ethics was I can't say where she is because I don't know. So all I could speak to was, well, she's showing me that she's smiling. She's showing me how excited she is to connect with me. And then she's showing me that she wants to create like a connection where every time you see this, you'll think of her because she's with you, So it's like, I couldn't speak to, I could only be in his energy of belief. And so part of the reason why I have not been like grabbing on from one dogma or one philosophy or another is I'm a little bit like, let's stay in the realm of possibility so that I can work in their field of belief, because that's within their integrity and their system of ethics. So it's not really me being like, oh, I figured everything out. Let me now disseminate it to you. It's more like, who are you? What do you believe in? Okay, within that realm of your belief system, what can we do that is going to turn you back towards like your path or your truth, And so if somebody comes to me and they're a Christian, then it's so crazy. Jesus comes in and we do some work with Jesus. And if they are not Christian, Jesus does not factor in.
Well, it wouldn't be helpful, right? Like this is the thing that's striking me about these conversations is like you're putting yourself in a position of, I mean, forgive me, but like it's very Christ-like, right? Like you're putting yourself in a sort of a
talking about razzle dazzle.
No, like but it is literally it's the opposite of egoic. It's saying like my work right now is not about me. If you were someone who had a specific set of beliefs that you were trying to help other people, like convert other people to, well, then it would be about you. It would be like, can I, convince this person of these things that I want them to believe? But rather it's like, no, what do they need right now from this interaction? What do they need? And that is, I mean, according to my own, whatever, the way that I understand Christianity, which I understand is not the same as, every other Christian, there's a lot of fighting over that. But that question is the most Christian question, is like, how can I identify what this person needs? And a lot of the time, what the person needs is not what they think that they want. And what they need is not necessarily what you want as the person who's trying to give them what they need. But it is what they need. There is an objective truth about what a person needs for their comfort and healing and growth. And that question and answering that question as a medium, as a psychic, as a healer, or whatever, if you're going to be successful, then it has to totally decenter you, and it has to in some ways decenter them. It's like, well, it's about them on a higher level. It's not necessarily about what their little egoic brain is running off of. So it's really fascinating to me that, like, yeah, if you were in a conversation or if you were in an interaction with somebody who was not Christian, or even more extremely, who was like very anti-Christian, it would not be helpful at all for you to come in as Jesus. I'll be like, well, that's not going to help that person. That person is going to have, like, immediately there's going to be this big wall up and no work will get done. And so I think that's really beautiful.
I also just want to say that I'm also doing this for myself, like for you to be like, oh, you're so Christ-like. Really the reason why I'm doing it is because it's so cool It's so fantastic. It's like me getting to be in this vibration of so much possibility and love. And I do it because it's so compelling. Like it's been this incredible teacher for me that sometimes I'll be in session with someone and this amazing message will come through and then I'll feel like this, like, so Beth, you could learn a little bit about this as well, you know? And so it's so compelling to me because it's been the most healing for me. And it's been like to this realm of possibility where I will be in session and be like, okay, so fairies are showing up for you, but I don't actually know if fairies are real. So let's just pretend that fairies are real. And so like a lot of times there are these things that happen. And then afterwards I'll be like, so maybe fairies are real, you know? Like it's been like information that I have never read or heard before sometimes that like, that's a really fun experience for me. Like if I could live a life that I get to continue to explore realms of possibility, like that's what I would want to do professionally. And somehow I've like cultivated this life where I get to do that.
Yeah.
When you said that it's about life being a mystery, I think there's so much of that is coming through and so much that is just totally necessary, regardless of whether or not you're approaching from a more materialist standpoint or a spiritual standpoint. An openness, while also still interest in the conversation, is completely required. The second you start shutting down with the scientific method, you're not doing the scientific method anymore. And I think it's true with this too. All you have to work off of is your framework and this person's framework. And but if you understand we're continuing to unfold a mystery together, then you get to be open. You get to keep using that method. I don't know. I'm just so struck by that. It seems to be life's pattern as well, that like you're not going to be approached by Christ and Christians in your life and experience healing and transformation in your life through, if you've had a horrible experience in a Christian church, you're going to find it in nature. You're going to find it in other people. And it's like, there's so much grace in the way that life seems to approach us with healing. And so it just seems like that sort of combination of interest and passion with humility is the perfect balance for a healer. My meditation teacher sometimes says that he's at his very best when he is admitting his shortcomings and testifying what he knows. It's like that's all any of us have. It's like, I don't know if fairies are real, but here's what I know, you know, and that's and I think that's just gorgeous. I love everything that you're saying.
I have to jump in here for two reasons. One, because I want to like back Mal up and talk about what I love, and also Emrys just took the dogs outside, so they're not screaming, and it's dinner time.
Perfect time.
But like, I'll tell you what I love. You know, we talk about all the stuff and crazy things in the liminal spaces, but like, I think what we really want to talk about is how to live in the mystery. Doesn't matter if you've seen a ghost. It doesn't matter if you can do remote viewing. It doesn't matter if you're a psychic. It doesn't matter if you've been abducted by aliens. What does matter is the sort of practical day-to-day stuff that works in those kinds of situations, that helps you defend yourself against ontological shock and just makes you generally a better human being to yourself and the people you love and people that you don't know. And what are these things? Discernment. You literally use the word discernment. You're using it because you're getting this information, and what do you do with that? But we all need to use our discernment, and in many ways have been taught to not trust our gut or to not, go with our intuition. And here you are saying, no, it's really important. The other thing is trusting your gut. Literally. Yeah. Just taking a minute and hearing that little still small voice. I see you standing in front of that flyer going like, I want to do this. Like, should I be doing this? Is this what I should be doing? And the voice going like, yes, listen to me. And you did, right? You did. The leap of faith is huge. It's huge. And sometimes, whatever, we might fall on our face, or we might find what we find out is the thing that we don't want to do, or we're led to a new opportunity. But I think the combination of discernment and trusting your gut and going by your intuition are so important for everyone to hear. And everyone has all of this available to them. and the embodiment practice that you've been talking about. So what I love is that you've rocked up and validated the hell out of everything that we've been talking about based on your own amazing life experiences. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I love your story too, because while I think it's magical and mystical, I also think it's accessible. I love that it was a slow process for you and that you were able to share. Like, at first, I'm like, am I doing anything? It's so relatable, and to me, that's what I'm hoping, is that people will hear the logic of how someone can end up being a psychic and they can be very helpful to you. And also, I don't know how special you are in comparison to the entire community because I've only seen so many healers, but I know that one of the things that must make you very special is that you do turn people toward their own gifts and toward their own intuition. And I think that that's probably what any good healer would do, is help unlock, like Tom was saying, the healing power inside of them, and even just the ability to hold and reparent your feelings and be able to manage your own plate better. And so I'm hoping people hear that in this, that like, this is not as kooky as you think. It is actually quite accessible, and it's in you already,
Oh my God, it's so true. It's so
what
true.
What I'm taking away from this whole thing in terms of accessibility is that if I decide to put my hands over some people, I'll turn into a psychic. So I'm looking forward to trying that out.
That's all you gotta do. Put your hands here.
Hey, Mal, is this something that we should ask also in the epilogue, or would you be willing to talk a little bit about what your experiences have been with Beth? Like, I don't know if you guys want to talk about that.
I would love to talk about that in the epilogue, if that's okay, just to give people a reason to come.
Man, we're really pushing hard for paid subscribers this time, aren't we?
Come on, man. I want to say one last thing too, is that you remember when Brother Richard was like, he finds out that Franciscan monks are a thing, and he goes, no one was floating on a cloud, no one had halos, they were just doing good work. I think that, like, yes, all of this stuff is available to all of us, and you don't, like, I don't know, ascend to sit at the right hand of God or whatever, to judge the quick and the dead. The magic is available to us every day, and sometimes it may not feel glamorous or transcendent necessarily, even though it is in its own way. I don't think any of us would disagree with that. So Beth can get up and talk about some quite extraordinary things, but like, I don't think you think of it as making you super duper special. I think it's just that's your dharma, as it were, That's your truth.
Yeah, it's what I get to do while I'm trying to figure my shit out.
How lucky for everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, that's what we're all doing, right? We're all practicing some set of skills or passions or things that we're drawn to that are helping us make sense of ourselves and of life.
Yeah. Some of us just make a podcast,
Beth, I can't thank you enough. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we close out? Anything else that's top of mind or heart for you?
I just feel like we're all trying to figure out what we're doing here and what we're supposed to be doing while we're here. And I believe that we all have a unique path. You don't need anybody else's path to look like yours. And I think that is the trickiest thing, is to be the uniquest expression of yourself, because there's so much about us in our early stages of human development where we want to belong to something, where we want to be similar or the same, because that provides so much soothing and so much safety. And the reality is many of us are meant to be unique and true to ourselves. And that is not the series of experiences in our life tend to poke at the most tender parts of our underbelly, where we're like, please don't make me do it that way. Or don't make me, I feel like human suffering is inherent, and connection to whatever you're drawn to, whatever the universe brings to you, can be like the balm or the sweet little dessert that kind of makes life worth living again. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I said anything that made sense, but I really just, I love having these kinds of conversations. I love being someone who can help a person see their goodness and their beauty, and how like being themselves is the answer to the question of what they're supposed to do with themselves. I feel really privileged to get to do what I do, and Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, I'm so glad that you were referred to me because you've helped me a lot personally. So I'm very glad that you do what you do as well. Once again, listeners, if you are interested in Beth, if you connected with her energy and the things that she was saying, you can find her on Instagram at Psychic Integration. Her handle is at Psychic Integration. And thanks.
All right. Well, everybody who has access to all of our paywalled content, please come join us for the epilogue.
Yeah, come on down. We're not done yet.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet. Couple of quick reminders before you go. First off, if you haven't left a rating on your platform of choice, please do that. One of the first things people look at when they're judging a show by its cover is the number of ratings it has. So if you dig what we're doing, show it with stars. In the epilogue, we talked about spiritual messages Mal got from her own feet during one of her sessions with Beth, the unexpected overlap between Mormon spiritual gifts and psychic abilities, and why the idea that God will make your art automatically great is just another kind of prosperity gospel. If you want to hear it, go to godsghostsufos.com or find the link in the description. See you next week, friends.